Today we are going to bead an orange shirt pin. Before I begin the step-by-step instruction of how we're going to make this pin, I want to take a moment to discuss the legacy that this orange shirt represents. In 2013, at an event honoring survivors of the St. Joseph's Indian Residential School, the orange shirt was presented as a symbol of the pain and suffering endured by survivors of the residential school system. During this event, Phyllis Wobstad, a residential school survivor, gave a harrowing account of her first day at a residential school where she was stripped of her personal belongings, including an orange shirt she was wearing. Phyllis's account of her experience at a residential school ultimately led to the idea of Orange Shirt Day. Orange Shirt Day is intended to be a day where Canadians take steps towards reconciliation by reflecting on the enduring legacy of residential schools. This grassroots movement eventually spread nationwide and led to the establishment of Truth and Reconciliation Day. If you would like to learn more about the history of the orange shirt, you can visit orangeshirtday.org. If you would like to learn more about the Métis experience in residential schools, you can watch the video linked in our description. Now, we will discuss the supplies needed to complete this project. If you applied to receive an orange shirt pin kit from the Ottapemstock Métis Government's Youth Team, your kit should include the following supplies we list. If you did not receive a kit to go along with this tutorial, that's okay. You can purchase the supplies that we list and still make your very own orange shirt pin. When you receive your kit, it should look something like this. Inside the kit, we will have a beading pattern stitched or stapled onto beading foundation or stiff felt. We will have vinyl backing that we will use to edge our piece. We will, of course, have some orange beads that will make up the bulk of the piece, some white beads that we will use to edge the piece. Both these beads are in size 10. You can use size 10 or 11 and get a similar pin to what I showed you earlier. We will also have 2 beading needles in size 10. We will be using a 2-needle method today. You will get some Nymo D thread, and then I also have a pin back for the pin itself. Now that we have that out of the way, I'm going to go through some other supplies that we need to complete this kit. A pair of scissors that we're going to use to snip our thread, a super glue of any kind that we're going to use to glue our pin down, a lighter, some wax or thread conditioner of any kind. Again, this is more optional. Get started with the tutorial portion of this video now. So you're going to thread both needles. One of your needles, you're going to tie one of the tails. But for the other needle, what you are going to do is you are going to tie those 2 tails into a knot. Next, we're going to take our double threaded needle and we're going to take it through our piece to where we are, and then we're going to pull it up. Once we've done that, we are good to start adding beads onto our beading thread. If you've never beaded before in your life, or if you only beaded a couple of times, let's first start with 5 beads on our needle. We're going to push them down our thread until it is touching our beading foundation. We're then going to take our beading thread and we're not going to tack it down yet. We're going to take our second thread, our tacking needle and thread, and we're going to push it up from the bottom or the back of our beading foundation up through our beading foundation and pattern in between beads 1 and 2 that you just strung. I'm going to tack it from, this is from like front ways to back ways, between the other side of there. And what you'll see is that we're creating a little loop between the thread. I'm going to pull that down, and that's going to tack bead number 1 down. So bead number 1 won't be able to move past where that loop we created was, and we're going to repeat that process for every single bead that we just added.
Once you've tacked down all 5 beads,
we're going to pick up our beading thread, and we're going to push it back down close to where bead number 5 is sitting. So we're pushing it back down, pulling the thread down so that it's gone. We're going to take our beading thread again and we're going to push up through the back to the top, and we're going to add 5 more beads, and then we'll just repeat that process. And I'll come back to you once I have this outlined, and we'll talk about what we're going to do next. Okay, so this is what it looks like once we've outlined our entire pattern. So if you like how this beaded pin is, the way I did it was I started by beading this middle line, add some beads to the thread up, and we're going to follow this line and come eventually up down here. If you beaded those 5 beads with no problem as a beginner beader, you can start experimenting and adding more beads on as you go. I'm not exactly a beginner beader anymore. I'm going to pick up more than 5 this time. I'm comfortable yet, you can still totally do 5. That's pretty close to the top, so what I'm going to do, again, I'm not tacking down or pushing this beading needle back down through the beading foundation. We're going to take our tacking needle and we're going to place it in between beads 1 and 2, so the first beads that we added, and push down our needle to the base of the beading foundation, and we're going to tack it down. So like I said, you can tack every needle or every bead with your needle and thread. If you felt comfortable and you understand the tacking process, you can also start tacking every second bead. As you're beading, if you don't like the way this pin looks, you can bead it any type of way you want to fill in the inside. So you could fill the lines vertically, horizontally, diagonally if you want. I don't know how that would look, but you can do what you want. Beading is an art form and it's a form of expression, so you can let your creative juices flow and figure out how you want to fill it. But this is just a beginner beading tutorial, and this is the way I beaded the pin that I've shown you throughout this video. So, and we're going to keep on tacking. And then we'll take our bead needle again, and we're just going to push it back down through our pattern and our beading foundation. Once we have done that, we have our midline, or almost midline, and we're going to pick right beside where that bead needle lands, and we're going to keep filling it out from up to down. So same thing, we're going to go from here to here, and then once you get to about the 3rd line, we'll talk again. Okay, once you get to like this point, and we're getting pretty close to where we're going to be filling into our sleeve, what we're going to do is we're not going to bead all the way up from top to bottom. Instead, we're going to go to about where this bead is. So we're going to kind of do a little bit of measuring by picking up beads as we go, and then we will, once we get to that point, we'll tack it down a little earlier, because if you notice on this piece, here's an example, you can see on this line, it doesn't go all the way up. Instead, we have then the beadwork going in a different direction to kind of make those sleeves a little bit more apparent. If you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. You can keep going from up to down. Again, beadwork is an art form, so it's kind of whatever your preference is. So, like I said, we're going to pick up some more beads. I got to put more beads down again. Oops. And then we're going to pick them up on our bead needle. And then I'm just going to kind of eyeball it to see how many beads it will take to kind of get to the point I want it. So we're going to pick up some beads. Again, if you are still rocking with picking up 5 beads at a time, you can certainly still do that. You can definitely move on past that if you're feeling ready. So again, we're going to tack in between the first bead we added this round and the second bead, and we're going to tack each and every bead, or every second bead if that's what you want to do. Again, it's kind of your choice. As you're beading, if you notice that your thread is starting to fray or looking a little worse for wear, that's when you'll bust out your wax again, and you can totally use that to recondition your thread to a certain point. To prevent breakage. If you have lots of breakage, again, I would recommend that you tie off your threads. So poke them back down through the beading foundation, tie them off, cut them, and if you have a lighter, singe them down, and then cut yourself out some new thread, recondition it, rethread your needles, do the thing. So we're going to continue tacking. And then as we tack, you'll notice I use kind of my thumb to push the beads down the string so that there's minimal space between them. And then we're coming to tack down our final bead that we added. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at it. Do I want another bead? Do I not? It is the question. I think it's okay with, let's add another bead and see what it looks like. So I'm going to pick up a small one. The nice thing about these beads is that they're seed beads, so they're not all the same size. So sometimes what you can do is you can pick specifically what you're looking for and see if that makes a difference. Now I'm just going to shove it down and see, do I like that better? And I'm just comparing to see. I'm going to take it off. I think what I have is fine. But again, beading is totally an art form, so how you want things to look is totally a personal decision. So I'm going to pull that beading needle back down, tack it down, and then now that I've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start filling it out. Instead of up and down, I'm going to do it side to side in the sleeve. So we're going to poke our needle up kind of at one side, our bead needle, not our tacking needle. Even I have to check sometimes, so you just want to be mindful when you're beading about thread management, especially when you're doing 2-needle beading. Okay, once we've pulled that up, we're going to pick up some more beads. I think about 5 should do it, and then we're going to start tacking again until we have this whole sleeve filled. So I'm going to see you again once the sleeve is filled, and then we're going to go through what the next steps are. Okay, now that I have filled out the one side, or a little bit more than one side now that I'm looking at the shirt, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie off my threads again, so doubling and triple knotting them, and then we are going to start back over on the other side of the shirt, and we're just going to repeat the same process that we did. So beading up and down and then side to side. Once I've done that, I'm going to show you what it looks like all completed, and we'll go through what the next step.
We are back. So we have filled in our pin. Now we are going to tear away the paper very carefully from around our beadwork. So we're just going to tear it away. And then we're going to talk about the next steps. So how do we get this from beading foundation to being a functional pin that we can wear? So as we're tearing it away, I just like to be pretty gentle because we don't want to rip up any threads. And then if you're having any difficulty getting in close, you can also take your scissors, and that can sometimes help as well. And we want to get as much paper out of here as possible. Okay, once we've got a lot of that paper gone, what we're going to do is we're going to take our beadwork, we're going to flip it over. We're going to take our handy dandy pair of scissors, and we're going to trim around our beadwork to cut this shirt out. While you're cutting, you need to be mindful of where your threads are because we don't want to snip them. So we're getting as close as to the threads as possible without cutting them. You can always flip back over to the front, but as a beginner beader, it's really important that you know where these threads are so you don't accidentally snip them and undo all that hard work you just put into it. And as we're cutting away this beading foundation, you can shape it a little bit more. You don't have to worry too much about getting too close because I'm going to show you a trick with the lighter that honestly will change everything. So as you can see, we see lots of this white, and if you don't really like that, what you can do is you can take a lighter and you're just going to run it along the side of your beading foundation. Don't hold it for a long time or else you'll singe it and it'll be black. And this is why it was important to remove that paper from close to the edge. Run it, and then as you can see, as we're running it back and forth, more and more of that white singes down. It also kind of seals our beading foundation. So it's a great little hack. We just have a look, see if we like it. If we do like it, then we can move on to the next steps here. So you're going to take your beaded pin, we're going to flip it over, and then we're going to take our handy dandy super glue of your choice. Today I'm using E6000, and we're also going to grab our pin back from our kit. So, okay, we have our pin back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my super glue and I'm going to put a dollop of glue on top of that pin back. Then I'm going to take our pin and I'm going to eyeball kind of where I want this to be. And then I'm taking off the pin back so it's easier at that, and then I can kind of play with it where I want it. Oopsie. And then once it's where I want it and it's glued down, we're gonna let it set for a little bit. For the glue that I used, E6000, that has a curing time of, I believe, 72 hours. So I wouldn't wear this pin unless it was within the 72 hours. But honestly, we want it to be tacky, so you could, if you wait an hour or two, where your pin's solidly attached here, shouldn't be an issue. So we're gonna let this dry, and then I'll come back to you with the next steps, which will be adding the backing and then edging this piece to have a fully functional pin. Okay, and we are back. So we have our pin glued down and it's pretty tacky. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take our black vinyl, and what I like to do is I just kind of line up the pin so that all of it's covered in the vinyl. I'm just going to poke it down and through where the vinyl is, and then we can take our scissors and we're just going to cut around the shape of our orange. When that's done, it should look something like this. You'll look on the sides and you'll see that it's pretty loose, so we need to sew this down or edge it. Today I'm going to show you how to edge it using a 1-bead loop method, so it will ultimately look like this pin where we have the white beads covering up the rough edges of our beadwork. So now that we've put our leather through, poked it through, what we're going to do is we're going to pour out some of those white beads from our beading kit, and we're going to start beading. Okay, so we have some white beads on the bead mat. What we're going to do is we're going to take one of our needles from before, and we're going to cut out some thread, and we're going to condition the thread if we have some wax. We're just going to tie one of the tails in a double or a triple knot, like I said from before. This part is all the same, like so. Once we have a double or triple knot, or a knot that we're satisfied the size of, we are going to trim any tails. So I'm just going to take my scissors, I'm going to cut the tail so it's not going to be a super long tail. Then we're going to take our needle and we're going to hold our pin in one hand, and we're going to push our needle through one side. We're going to peel back that back foundation. We're going to push it through just the beading foundation. And then you can see that the knot's there. Then when we press the beading, the vinyl back, we won't see the knot. So once we've done that and our knot is sufficiently hidden from where we want to start, we're going to pick up 2 white beads for this edging method. It's called a 1-bead loop, but ironically we pick up 2 beads to start. Push them down your thread until they're flush with your beadwork. And then what you're going to do is you're going to kind of lay them like so, and just press them where they're flush, and then from the bottom you're going to push up about where that second bead ends. So I kind of use my thumb nail to kind of mark where I should be coming up, and you're going to go through both the faux leather backing and the layer of beading felt. So you're going to go and you're going to do that. As you're doing that, what you're going to notice is it makes a loop, hence the name, one bead loop. Once we've pulled it through, these still aren't secure, so we're going to go up the bead that's closest to where your thread came up, like that. We're going to go down the other bead, like so, and then we're going to go back up that first bead, like that. Pull it up, and then we're good to get started on the edging. Now we are going to pick up one bead, like so. Push it down your thread to where it's flush. We're going to take our other hand and we're going to lay it where it needs to go. So we're going to use our thumbnail again to mark whereabouts that bead ends, and we're going to push up from the back between both the backing and the beading foundation, and then it's laying kind of like that. And to secure it, we're just going to go up that bead, so from the bottom to the top, and we're going to pull it up so then it lays flat, and you can see it's starting to cover this raw edge. So we're going to repeat that process one more time. I'll explain it again. Pick up one bead, push it down so it's flush where it needs to go, and then I use my thumb to kind of mark where it is. From the back, I'm going to push through both pieces of beading foundation and vinyl, like so. Push the thread through, pull the thread until it's all contained and the bead is laying like that, and then we're going to go up, push our needle up from the bottom to the top of the needle, or of the bead, and pull your thread all the way through, and then it's going to lay like that. And then we're just going to continue doing that all the way around until we have a fully edged piece like this. And I'll meet you once we've done that. So I'm back now, and I am on my last bead. So this is what we're going to do. So from our last bead, we've already went up it. What we're going to do is we're going to go down the first bead we added, like so. And that kind of cinches it together. And then I'm just going to poke my needle back through that back vinyl and beading foundation. So as you can see, it kind of cinches them close together. I'm going to go back up that first bead we added. And then what we're going to do is we're going to need to tie this off. So to tie it off, I'm just going to go up and down a couple of beads to kind of run the thread a little bit away from where we started, like so. And then we come to this one where we went down. What I'm going to do, this is nice and easy because we can see it. There's this white thread here. I'm going to hook my needle or place it in between that white thread and that black vinyl backing, like that. And you see how it's kind of making a loop? What you're going to do is you're going to take your needle and you're going to pull it through that loop, and it creates a knot. What we're going to do is we're now going to go back up through that needle. So be careful because it does have a tendency to get caught. So just untangle it up through, and then that hides that knot. And then I just like to go down and up a couple more of the beads here so that the knot is quite far away, or when we cut this thread and it's going to be a bit a ways away from the knot, so it just helps for security purposes. So the next bead, we're going to go up. Once we've done that, like that, we're going to take our scissors and we're going to snip that thread pretty close to the tail. See how we have the tail? We're going to take our lighter, cinch it down, and we have a completed pin. I'm going to stick the pin back on it, and then you can wear this however you like. Congratulations, you've completed your beaded orange shirt pin. I hope you feel a sense of pride and accomplishment for what you've been able to achieve. If you like this content, you can subscribe to our YouTube page and keep an eye out for future mail outs.